Ever pondered about the most notorious defense scandal in India's history? The Bofors scandal, a name that echoes in our political halls even today. This was a case of a major defense deal gone horribly wrong in the 1980s, a deal that involved the Swedish company Bofors and the Indian government. The crux of the scandal lay in the alleged payment of kickbacks by Bofors to secure a contract for supplying howitzer guns to the Indian Army. Quite a lucrative deal it was, involving around 410 howitzer guns and worth a staggering 1,500 crores. But what makes this deal infamous are the allegations of corruption and kickbacks that reportedly reached all the way to the top echelons of the Indian government. So, buckle up as we delve deep into the murky world of the Bofors scandal. A scandal that left an indelible mark on the face of Indian politics and continues to serve as a stark reminder of the corruption that can infiltrate even the highest levels of power. In the heart of the 1980s, a deal was struck that would forever leave a black mark on India's political canvas. Imagine, if you will, a time of relative peace and prosperity. India, a rising power on the global stage, was looking to modernize its defense capabilities. This was the backdrop against which a deal was struck with the Swedish company Bofors to supply 410 howitzer guns to the Indian Army. The deal was of an immense scale. It was worth a staggering 1,500 crores rupees, a sum that was almost unimaginable at that time. Such a large sum of money for a defense deal was unprecedented, and it signaled India's intent to become a major player in the global defense arena. But this was not just any deal. It was a deal that carried the weight of the nation's security on its shoulders. The howitzer guns were to be the linchpin in the modernization of the Indian Army's artillery. They were expected to provide a significant boost to the Army's firepower and significantly enhance its combat capabilities. The deal was hailed as a game changer. It was seen as a major step forward in the modernization of the Indian Army. It was celebrated as a symbol of India's rising stature on the global stage. But behind the scenes, something was amiss. Whispers of corruption began to circulate. Allegations of kickbacks started to emerge. The deal, it seemed, was not as straightforward as it appeared to be. There were claims that Bofors had paid kickbacks to secure the deal. These allegations were not just about money, they were about trust. They were about the trust that the Indian people had placed in their leaders and their government. These allegations, if true, would mean that the very people who were entrusted with the security of the nation had betrayed that trust. They would mean that corruption had seeped into the highest echelons of power. They would mean that the deal, which was supposed to strengthen the nation, was in fact a symbol of its weakness. However, the deal was not as straightforward as it seemed. Speaker. As the saying goes, truth has a way of coming out, and so it did, through a Swedish journalist's dogged pursuit. The journalist, undeterred by the magnitude of the allegations, made a shocking revelation. Kickbacks had been paid to Indian politicians and officials. The alleged sum, a staggering 64 crores. Speaker, the Swedish company Bofors, it was claimed, had paid these kickbacks to ensure the deal went through smoothly. The magnitude of the corruption was astounding, and the names involved were no less so. The then Prime Minister, Rajiv Gandhi, was among those implicated, along with several other high-ranking officials. Speaker, the reaction was immediate and intense. The Indian public, once trusting and hopeful, now felt betrayed and angry. They had put their faith in these leaders only to have it shattered by revelations of corruption and greed. Speaker, the opposition parties seized upon this public sentiment, demanding answers, demanding justice. The outcry was so deafening that the government had no choice but to act. A joint parliamentary committee was quickly established to investigate the allegations. Speaker, the committee was tasked with unraveling the web of corruption that had been woven around the Bofors deal, a web that reached all the way to the top echelons of the government. The Swedish journalist's allegations were like a spark that ignited a firestorm. The Bofors scandal was no longer a whispered rumor. It was a public outcry for justice. Speaker, the Indian people were demanding accountability from their leaders. They were demanding an end to the culture of corruption that had tainted their democracy. They were demanding the truth. Speaker, the outcry was deafening and an investigation was inevitable. The Bofors scandal was now in the public eye and the people were watching, waiting for justice to be served. The stage was set for one of the most significant investigations in Indian history. A probe that would reveal just how deep the roots of corruption had penetrated into the Indian political system. With the country's eyes fixed on them, the government had no choice but to initiate an investigation. A joint parliamentary committee was set up, tasked with unraveling the truth behind the allegations. What they found shocked the nation. The investigation revealed an intricate web of corruption. It was discovered that Bofors had indeed paid a staggering sum of 64 crores as kickbacks. These illicit payments were not just received by low-level officials, but reached the apex of our political system. Among the recipients the investigation found were none other than the then Defense Minister and even the Prime Minister himself, Rajiv Gandhi. The investigation also uncovered a disturbing disregard for ethical conduct within our government. Despite receiving warnings from the Indian Embassy in Sweden about the potential corruption involved in the deal, the government chose to look the other way. The allure of kickbacks, it seemed, was too strong to resist. The Defense Minister, the man entrusted with safeguarding the country's security, was implicated in this scandal. His involvement threw into sharp relief the depth of the corruption. The very individuals tasked with serving the nation had, it seemed, betrayed its trust. The Prime Minister, the highest political office in the country, was not spared either. The investigation found that Rajiv Gandhi, too, had received kickbacks. This revelation sent shockwaves through the nation. If the head of the government could be implicated in such a scandal, who then could the people trust? It's important to remember that these weren't mere allegations. These were the findings of a joint parliamentary committee, an entity comprised of representatives from all political parties. The corruption was not a figment of the opposition's imagination, but a stark reality that had been staring us in the face. The findings were damning, revealing a deep-rooted web of corruption. The Bofors scandal was not just about a defense deal gone wrong. It was a glaring example of how corruption had seeped into the highest offices of our country, casting doubt on the integrity of our leaders and our political system. The ripples of the Bofors scandal were felt far and wide. It wasn't just a case of corruption. It was a stark revelation of the rot that had seeped into the bones of our democracy. The scandal left a lasting impact on our nation and its psyche. The scandal tarnished India's reputation on the global stage. The world's largest democracy was now seen as a breeding ground for corruption and deceit. International relations were strained, with many countries questioning the integrity of their interactions with India. The scandal cast a long shadow over India's image, one that took years to shake off. Public trust in the government took a massive hit. The people who were supposed to lead the nation, to protect its interests, were instead siphoning off money for their personal gain. It was a betrayal that cut deep, leaving the Indian populace disillusioned and cynical. The faith in the system was shattered, and the belief in the incorruptibility of the highest offices was lost. The Indian Army, the symbol of our nation's strength and pride, was also a victim of this scandal. The deal was meant to modernize the artillery, to equip our soldiers with the best. But instead, the corruption involved in the deal denied them this opportunity. The soldiers, who put their lives on the line for the country, were left with outdated equipment, all because of the greed of a few. The Bofors scandal was a blow to the nation and its people. It was a painful reminder of the deep-rooted corruption in our system, of the power of greed, and of the lengths people would go to fulfill it. But it also served as a wake-up call. a call to action for the people of India to demand transparency, accountability, and a corruption-free nation. The Bofors scandal was not just a scandal, it was a turning point in our nation's history. The Bofors scandal serves as a grim reminder of the devastating effects of corruption. It underscores the urgent need for transparency, accountability, and vigilance in our democracy. We cannot afford to forget the lessons of the past, nor ignore the echoes of the Bofors scandal that continue to resonate today. Corruption erodes trust, hampers development, and tarnishes our nation's image. It's high time we demand and ensure a corruption-free India. We must insist on stringent measures to prevent such scandals and hold our leaders accountable. Let's push for reforms that promote transparency and root out corruption from our political system. The fight against corruption begins with us. We are the guardians of our democracy, and we have the power to shape our nation's future. Let's use that power wisely and responsibly. Together, let's ensure that the lessons from the Bofors scandal guide us towards a more accountable